What if everything you've been told about success is incomplete? Not wrong, just incomplete. Because most people grow up hearing the same formula: work hard, stay consistent, and eventually, things will work out. It sounds simple, almost comforting. Like if you just follow the rules, life will reward you. But here's the part no one really talks about. There are people who work incredibly hard and still feel stuck. There are people who stay consistent for years and don't see the results they expected. And then there are others who seem to move forward faster, even when their path looks chaotic, messy, and completely unpredictable. So, what's really going on? Let me take you somewhere for a second. Imagine it's late at night. Everything is quiet. You're lying there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about your life. Thinking about where you thought you'd be by now, and where you actually are. Maybe you feel behind. Maybe you feel like you've wasted time. Maybe you've started things and didn't finish them. Or maybe you've been trying, really trying, and it still feels like nothing is clicking. That quiet frustration? That feeling that you should be further ahead? You're not alone in that. In fact, psychologists have studied this exact feeling. There's something called the gap, the difference between where you are and where you think you should be. And the bigger that gap feels, the more pressure, stress, and self-doubt you experience. But here's the twist. That gap isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes, it's the very thing that pushes you forward. Think about it. If you were completely satisfied, completely comfortable, with no sense of wanting more, would you even try to grow? Probably not. Discomfort, as frustrating as it is often the starting point of change. But here's where most people get it wrong. They interpret discomfort as a sign to stop. They feel resistance, uncertainty, fear, and they think, maybe this isn't for me. Or worse, maybe I'm just not CA. And that's the moment everything stalls. Because what feels like a stop sign is often just part of the path. Let's talk about something interesting. There's a concept in psychology called the growth zone. It sits right outside your comfort zone, but just before panic. It's that space where things feel challenging, slightly uncomfortable, but still manageable. That's where real progress happens. Not when things are easy. Not when everything feels under control. But when you're stretched just enough to grow. Now here's the problem. Most people never stay in that zone long enough. They either retreat back to comfort, or they push too far into overwhelm and burnout. And because of that, they never experience the compounding effect of small, consistent growth. And that compounding effect? It's powerful. There was a study that showed improving just 1% every day leads to massive long-term results. Not because of one big breakthrough, but because of tiny improvements stacked over time. It's like interest in a bank account. At first, it doesn't look like much. But give it time, and suddenly the growth becomes undeniable. Your effort works the same way. But here's where it gets tricky. We live in a world that rewards immediacy. Likes, views, notifications, instant feedback. So when something takes time, real time, it feels like it's not working. You start questioning yourself. Shouldn't I be seeing results by now? Am I doing something wrong? Is this even worth it? And those questions can be dangerous, not because they're wrong, but because they can lead you to quit too early. Let me tell you something that might change how you see this. There's something called the plateau of latent potential. It's the idea that for a long time, your efforts don't seem to produce visible results. You're putting in work, but nothing appears to be happening. Then suddenly, things start to click. Progress becomes visible. Results start showing. And it looks like success happened overnight. GHT. But it didn't. It was building the entire time beneath the surface. Think about bamboo trees. For years after planting, nothing seems to happen above ground. You water it, you take care of it, and still nothing. But underground, the root system is expanding. And then one day, it shoots up rapidly. Your growth can look exactly like that. Invisible, until it isn't. Now here's something else people don't talk about enough. Direction matters just as much as effort. Because you can work incredibly hard on the wrong things. You can stay busy all day, feel productive, check off tasks, and still not move closer to what actually matters to you. And that leads to a different kind of frustration. The kind where you're doing a lot, but going nowhere. So let's pause for a second. Ask yourself honestly, what do you actually want? Not what sounds impressive. Not what other people expect from you. Not what looks good on social media. What do you genuinely care about? That question is harder than it sounds. Because answering it requires you to be honest, and sometimes that honesty is uncomfortable. Maybe you realize you've been chasing something that doesn't excite you. Maybe you've been following a path that doesn't feel like yours. But clarity, even when it's uncomfortable, is powerful. Because once you have it, everything starts to align. Your decisions become clearer. Your focus sharpens. Your energy stops being scattered. And suddenly, your effort starts working for you instead of against you. Now let's talk about something that holds almost everyone back at some point. Fear. Specifically, the fear of failure. It's subtle, but it shows up in so many ways. Procrastination. Overthinking. Waiting for the right time. All of these are often just fear in disguise. Because taking action means risking something. It means you might fail. You might look stupid. You might not get the result you wanted. And that uncertainty? It's uncomfortable. But here's a perspective shift. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of it. In fact, if you look at almost any successful person's story, you'll find a pattern. Setbacks. Mistakes. Rejections. Over and over again. Take someone like Thomas Edison. It's often said he failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. And when asked about it, he didn't see it as failure. He saw it as discovering thousands of ways that didn't work. That's a completely different mindset. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" he asked, "What can I learn?" And that shift changes everything. Because when failure becomes feedback, it loses its power over you. You stop avoiding it and start using it. Now, let's be real for a moment. Knowing all of this doesn't make the journey easy. There will still be days where you feel stuck. Days where motivation is low. Days where progress feels non-existent. Days where quitting seems like the most logical option. And in those moments, something important happens. You make a decision. Not a big, dramatic one. A small, quiet one. Do you keep going or do you stop? And that decision, repeated over time, shapes your entire life. Because success isn't built in one moment. It's built in those small choices. The days when you don't feel like it, but you show up anyway. The times when it's easier to quit, but you keep going. And here's something most people underestimate. Consistency beats intensity. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to go all out every single day. You just need to keep moving forward. Even if it's slow. Even if it doesn't feel impressive. Because over time, that steady progress adds up. Now let's zoom out for a second. Imagine your life 5 years from now. Same habits. Same mindset. Same actions. Where does that lead? Now imagine you make small improvements. You get a little more focused. A little more disciplined. A little more intentional. Where does that lead? The difference between those two paths is massive. And it starts with what you do today. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Today. Because waiting doesn't create clarity. Action does. You figure things out by doing. By trying. By adjusting. By learning as you go. And yes, it will feel messy. It will feel uncertain. But that's part of it. There is no perfect path. Only the one you build as you move forward. And along the way, something interesting happens. You change. Not just your results, but you. You become more resilient. More confident. More capable. Not because things got easier, but because you got stronger. And that's the real transformation. It's not just about achieving goals. It's about who you become in the process. Because that version of you, the one who kept going, the one who didn't quit, the one who figured things out, that version is capable of far more than you realize right now. So the next time you feel stuck, the next time you feel like nothing is working, remember this. Progress isn't always visible. Growth isn't always obvious. And just because you can't see the results yet, doesn't mean they're not happening. You might be in the phase where things are building beneath the surface. You might be closer than you think. So don't stop. Keep going. Because one day, you're going to look back and realize the moment you wanted to quit was actually the moment everything was about to change. And when that happens, you'll understand something most people never fully grasp. It was never about being perfect. It was never about having everything figured out. It was about showing up, again and again, until things started to make sense. If this resonated with you, take a second to reflect. Where are you holding back? What have you been waiting to start? What's one small step you can take today? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want more content like this, content that actually pushes you forward, not just motivates you for a few minutes, make sure you like this video and subscribe. Because the journey you're on, it's just getting started.